Hmm. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, good morning, Margaret.
Thanks for joining us.
No, happy to be here.
Great. I think we'll have probably a dozen people.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Peggy, I like your background. It looks very serene with the water. Can't hear you.
This is a pond right close to 394 and Louisiana Avenue, and that's a great blue heron.
I see that. Very good.
Yeah, pretty cool picture. I love it. Although it's not very seasonal right now.
No,
Suppose I should put up my falls colors picture, but I like this.
seems like seasonal of late has just been rain. Be happy when that is over. But we needed it though, so it's okay.
Yeah. Long as we can get out and get some exercise and do whatever remaining chores we have.
Exactly.
It's kind of strange to have impatience still blooming in late October. Donna, how are you? Haven't seen you for quite a long time. Oh, well.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I'm interested in what you have to say today. Believe me, I think that more people should be. I mean, obviously, we're going to find out that we're going to be able to bring um, campaigning to a different level, which is. I mean, we'll be able to see more things that look real that aren't going to be real.
Oh, that's for sure.
The question is, how are we going to tell the difference?
That is the good question. We'll let Jeff tell us the answer to that.
Well, I come with also more questions than answers, and that is going to be a real challenge as more and more entities are looking to put some legislative guardrails around AI We definitely don't want to in any way stifle innovation in the development of algorithms because they can be very helpful, of course, but when used improperly by bad actors, clearly it can create problems.
Life seemed to be so much simpler.
Yeah. But as we think about AI too, in so many ways, it makes our life simpler. I don't know how many times, all of you like me have used either an Alexa or Siri for, answering a question or playing music. I love when Netflix uses an algorithm to suggest other shows I might be interested, or Amazon additional products based on what I've shopped before. When I go to Target, my shopping list can start online because of what I've purchased in the past. And those are algorithms that are really helpful. So we have to be careful we don't throw out the good as we try to regulate the bad. And that is the challenge.
Yeah, and in the medical arena, I mean, we're getting a lot of advances and people were able to figure out things more holistically because of artificial intelligence. And I mean, I was out to Silicon Valley a couple of years ago, and I was shocked, quite frankly. I don't know why I was, but I was shocked that you drive up and down the streets there, and it's company after company I haven't heard of that are robotics and artificial intelligence.
And the other thing that's really odd to see out there is if you've ever been passed by an autonomous vehicle, it's just a strange new world that we're entering into that's powered by artificial intelligence in many ways.
We were in San Francisco last week, and we couldn't believe how many of these cars were whizzing down the street with nobody in them and this little thingy on the top. It was kind of scary. You were hoping that you weren't going to be in their way.
I'm just glad they're testing most of those in San Francisco and not here.
Yeah, right.
Well, just think about, it wasn't that many years ago. I mean, I at least I don't view it as such, but I remember when we went from, in downtown St. Paul, when we went from elevator operators to automatic elevators. And during that transition period, we had a period of time where the companies, to get people used to it, still put an elevator operator on to push the button. But when people figured out that they could handle pushing a button for themselves on the floor, I think we're better off without the elevator operators, quite frankly. But
I kind of like the gas station attendants, though. I miss those. In the winter,
in the state of Oregon,
great.
In the state of Oregon, you still need to use an attendant. And I don't know why that is still going on, but if you go to stop for gas, somebody has to come up and fill up for you.
But
wow.
Listen to this. I was in California a couple of weeks ago in San Diego, and I filled up for gas, 18 gallons of gas, 2 times, almost 18, a little bit less than 18. And the price was about $120 each time. Now, the sting was a lot less. I mean, I was shocked to begin with, but the sting was a lot less after I figured out that I had a dual fuel vehicle that got me about 700 miles to the gallon. So,
what is a dual fuel vehicle that gets that?
Well, gas and electric.
Oh, hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid.
Yeah, like a plug-in hybrid.
Yeah, mine was not plug-in, but yeah.
I have a plug-in hybrid, and I love it because I've gotten well over 1,000 miles to the gallon.
There you go.
There you go. My driving within 20 miles.
Well, this is a pathetic admission in terms of how my social life, but my wife and I were out in Vegas last January, and I stayed in for the evening to watch the Republican governor's State of the State, which some people wonder why you would spend, be in Vegas and be in watching a State of the State message. But it was really interesting. I was fascinated at some of the things he was talking about in terms of electric vehicles and becoming the center for that, and autonomous vehicles and all that kind of stuff. He was way ahead of anybody that I've heard in Minnesota in terms of promoting that on either side of the aisle. I mean, it was just amazing. He was just way out in terms of what we would view as way out. But clearly, the economy's changing, society's changing. We're going to go to autonomous. We're going to go to electric, and I do enough work in this field that I can tell you with confidence that that's happening, whether we think so or not. Within 10 years, you'll see most of the vehicles on the road will be autonomous.
It's also interesting in agriculture, the amount of work being done by John Deere for autonomous tractors.
Yeah.
And, that's a real great application. And there's already autonomous lawnmowers and other things that Toro has. But yeah, it's a brave new world out there. And what we're talking about today, artificial intelligence and smart algorithms and machine learning, really powers so much of that. Margaret, how would you like to kick off here?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think we've pretty much got everybody. So maybe if you want to start out telling us a little bit about your background and what you do for MnTech, and then you can launch into your presentation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it'll be more of a conversation than anything. But so my name is Jeff Tollefson. I have the pleasure of serving as the president of the Minnesota Technology Association. Many of you may remember the organization through our former name of MHTA, the Minnesota High Tech Association, of which Rick was a former executive director, then Kate Rubin, and then my predecessor, known to many of you, Margaret Anderson Kelleher. So the organization's been around for just
and you got one other one in that group that this group should be familiar with. Bob Vanasek was the president of it at one time.
Okay. So a long history as an organization, and yes, part of what we do remains policy and advocacy work, making sure that we're helping educate and team up and partner with elected officials to pass smart legislation, but often it's playing defense too, of helping inform around unintended consequences of certain legislation. But a lot of what we're doing right now as an organization is focused on tech workforce development. I won't go into all what that looks like, but we have been underinvesting in and under prioritizing STEM education, and it's really beginning to show. Code.org, which is a national research organization, will be releasing its annual kind of state of computer science education report next week. And for the fourth year in a row, Minnesota will be dead last, 50th out of 50 states, in the percentage of our schools that even offer a computer science class. And we're not going to be developing our next generation homegrown tech talent if we're not helping inspire youth at younger ages, providing them experiential learning opportunities in STEM fields. But that's a whole different thing. But just know that that's something that MnTech is taking very seriously and really working to try to create the digitally skilled, employment-ready workforce that all of our businesses need.
What was the name of the reading group that you just mentioned?
It's called Code.org. Code.org. And we're actually hosting at Best Buy headquarters tomorrow our 5th annual Tech Talent Conference, where we'll be sharing a Minnesota-specific report around the state of our tech workforce and how many IT professionals that we have to skill up over the next 10 years to not just meet job growth demand, but really fill replacement jobs as people increasingly are retiring or leaving our industry. I won't go into all of that because we've got other things we'll talk about. Before I took this role on 4 years ago, I spent 12 years in the nonprofit field. I started a nonprofit in St. Paul in 2008 called Genesis Works. And it's a nonprofit helping low-income high school students access careers in technology through a meaningful paid senior year internship. We started with 11 students that first year in 2008, and over 400 students were placed just this past year. And then before that, I spent nearly 20 years in the venture capital field doing startups with technology companies. So a long tech background in a number of different ways. But when Rick extended the invitation to come and share a little bit about what AI is doing and its impact on election cycles in government, I was happy to say yes. And thank you for having me today. As I was preparing this, I really didn't prepare a lot because I asked my dear friend ChatGPT to help. So just this morning, in 20 quick seconds, it created its own introduction for today. So I will read to you what my friend GPT wants to say for the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to address this esteemed gathering of legislative leaders in the great state of Minnesota. As a form of artificial intelligence, I stand before you today with a profound sense of responsibility and opportunity to discuss the transformative potential of AI on our state elections. In a world characterized by rapid technological advancement, the integration of AI into our electoral processes presents both a challenge and a promise. AI has the power to enhance the efficiency and security of our voting systems, allowing us to better serve the people of Minnesota. It can help streamline voter registration, improve accessibility for all citizens, and even aid in more equitable districting, thereby upholding the democratic principles upon which our state was founded. However, as we embark on this AI-enabled journey, we must remain vigilant and proactive in addressing the ethical, privacy, and security concerns that accompany such advancements. My purpose here today is to foster dialogue and understanding, to ensure that the impact of AI on our state elections aligns with the values we hold dear: fairness, transparency, and equal representation for all Minnesotans. Together, as we navigate this intricate landscape, I am confident that we can harness AI's potential to forge a more robust, accessible, and secure electoral system, setting an example for the nation. Your insights, leadership, and commitment to the democratic process are invaluable as we chart this course. Thank you for your dedication to the future of Minnesota and the democratic principles that define our great state. All I asked ChatGPT in my prompt was, write in the first person, with you being artificial intelligence, an introduction to a group of legislative leaders in Minnesota, highlighting the impact that AI might have on state elections. 15 seconds later, it prepared all of that. That's the power of AI when it's used properly. And when we think about other opportunities for AI, I gave it another prompt of please provide examples of how AI can impact state elections. And it wrote out in 20 seconds, 10 really great areas. I'm just going to tell you the 10. And if you want me to read what ChatGPT, our dear friend, said about each, happy to go to it. But the 10 were in voter registration and verification, voter outreach and engagement, election security, election predictions, language accessibility, election monitoring, voter experience, redistricting and fair representation, accessibility for disabled voters, and post-election auditing. And it goes into detail on all of these, of where there's an advantageous role that algorithms and artificial intelligence can play. For example, I'll just read the voter registration and verification. It just says, AI can streamline voter registration processes by automating data entry and verification. Machine learning algorithms can help identify duplicate registrations and verify voter identities more accurately, reducing the risk of voter fraud and ensuring the integrity of voter rolls. The list goes on. I also then asked, what are some of the pitfalls that we need to be concerned about? And the prompt to ChatGPT was, provide examples of how AI has already been used to influence and impact state elections. And it starts with AI has been used in various ways to influence and impact elections, often raising concerns related to disinformation, voter targeting, and cybersecurity. While not all of these uses of AI are ethical or legal, they serve as examples of the potential impact of AI on state elections. So it goes into things like social media manipulation, with AI-driven bots and algorithms using to spread disinformation and fake news on social media platforms. Micro-targeting, by analyzing vast amounts of data, AI can identify specific voter demographics and deliver messages that resonate with them, potentially affecting voter behavior. We've all seen deep fakes, these images created that some came out. The DeSantis campaign got caught using some. There were some that involved President Biden. A lot of these deep fakes are really troubling because they can be so accurate looking in terms of what you're seeing. Algorithmic gerrymandering. We've seen examples of states that have used artificial intelligence to gerrymander for their own political gain, for one party or another. Voter suppression. AI has been used to identify and target vulnerable voter groups with false information about polling locations, voting requirements, or election dates, leading to voter suppression efforts that disenfranchise eligible voters. It just goes on, the things that we need to be cognizant of within our election system. Now, that said, I think we could all agree there needs to be guardrails. There needs to be accountability for things that are malicious, things that are illegal. But in doing so, in creating and drafting legislation, we, at least at MnTech, and I know for other tech-enabled organizations, we don't want to suppress innovation at the same time. And there's a careful balance, because as we talked, there's so many great applications of computer algorithms. We talked about whether it's in e-commerce or virtual assistants like a Siri, GPS navigation. I use Google Maps all the time, sometimes Waze. I love how it will tell me where there's traffic and give me a new route. All that's enabled through AI. Fraud detection on credit cards. I had my bank reach out to me a couple of months ago saying that there was suspicious activity that was detected through an algorithm. Spam filters, another great example of how artificial intelligence and algorithms are keeping a lot of junk and spam away from us. There's just so many examples of good use, whether it's in DNA sequencing, diagnosis of disease, where artificial intelligence can be used. But we've also seen in healthcare opportunities to take control because of cyber risks for certain implantable devices that might be reprogrammable through a wireless connection to really create some very significant health problems as a result. The list goes on of the good and the bad. I just hope that we are mindful of balance when it comes to regulation. I'm going to share one more thing before we can start a little more of a conversation. The CEO of IBM just a couple of weeks ago wrote a piece that really was covering, this was September 13th from Arvind Krishna, the CEO of IBM. And it's titled, How Governments and Companies Should Advance Trusted AI. I'll just go to the three themes that he had outlined. One is regulate AI risk, not AI algorithms. Said not all uses of AI carry the same level of risk. While some might seem harmless, others can have far-reaching consequences, such as propagating misinformation, introducing bias into lending decisions, or compromising election integrity. because each AI application is unique, we strongly argue that regulation must account for the context in which AI is deployed and must ensure that high-risk uses of AI are regulated more closely. He said there's a successful precedent in semiconductors where we've never licensed the invention of new chips. Instead, we regulate when, where, and how those products are used. So one is, let's focus on the risks, not regulating algorithms themselves. His second was to make sure that we make AI creators and deployers accountable and not immune to liability for things that they've done. For example, if you're a company and you use AI for employment decision making, they can't claim immunity just because it's an algorithm. There has to be a level of responsibility for companies or people using them wrong. And then his third suggestion was to support open AI innovation and not create an AI licensing regime. There are some European countries that are trying to license when and how you can use algorithms and AI, and it becomes a slippery slope because things are changing all the time to try to regulate what gets, quote, licensed for use and what doesn't. So I think we've seen the number of entities that have adopted regulations grow increasingly. I was on Wikipedia this morning. This will be the last paragraph I'll read. It says the regulation of artificial intelligence is the development of public sector policies and laws for promoting and regulating artificial intelligence. It's therefore related to the broader regulations of algorithms. The regulatory and policy landscape for AI is an emerging issue in jurisdictions globally. According to the AI Index at Stanford University, the annual number of AI-related laws passed in the 127 surveyed countries jumped from only one that was passed in 2016 to 37 laws that were passed in 2022 alone. And what we're seeing in states across the country and nations around the world is a rush to try to pass legislation because it's kind of the thing to do right now. And I just hope we're mindful that we need to pump the brakes a little bit. There's a lot that we need to learn. And I'm hoping that we don't move too quickly to try to corral what innovation can look like. And with that, I'm going to be quiet and listen to what you have to say, and I'll try to answer any other questions.
And we have at least one member, Peggy Lepick, that's on the campaign finance board, which would be interesting to see if they're looking at any of these issues regarding AI.
I am not aware of it, but I suppose it could be in the future.
Yeah, I have a sense it'll be coming up in this next session. I don't anticipate that anything would get passed, but I think working groups are appropriate to begin the conversation around how do we create boundaries and how do we hold bad actors accountable for the misuse of AI.
Hi, Jeff. This is Todd Otis. Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you for doing this, and thanks for Rick and Teresa and everybody. This is huge. I'm coming to our meeting as a co-chair of a group called Clean Elections Minnesota. And we're very interested and concerned about the misuse of AI. So you can imagine we want to have some guardrails on what happens in elections in terms of the truth and the capacity to tell the truth or counter a falsehood. So I hear what you're saying, that it might be premature to actually develop legislation, but if you were to advise legislators on how to go about doing this, do you have a few thoughts that you'd want to share with us?
I think it's a light touch, a light approach to legislation. Clearly, there's areas where you can look at, I could go down these 10 areas that they talked about, on voter outreach and election security, monitoring, if somebody is utilizing an AI powered bot or algorithm in a way that results in voter suppression or disinformation, we have to find out a way to hold those individuals or organizations accountable. But let's not regulate the algorithm itself, but just the application of it that's in an untoward manner. And that opens up a door to so many different things. Where do you stop with what you put on the list of what could be a violation? And that's for individuals like you that have, I'm not a legislator and I don't claim to be, but to me, it feels like it would be difficult to craft.
Well, it's really important. I mean, I would trust your judgment on that kind of thing, but it's so relevant today. The power is scary. The power of being able to get something that's false, not rebutted in time to swing an election.
Absolutely. And even ChatGPT, it's a large language model that learns from text everywhere. I can't go back now to all of these things that ChatGPT provided to me this morning and find any source document that would back it up. So there can be false information just in that ChatGPT search already. And those are some of the challenges and issues that we do face.
In the, if you start combining some things like the, and I admit I'm a little bit more focused on the unfair campaign practices that I could foresee coming down the road. And I'm a little sensitive about that. And I'm sure anybody that's run for office probably feels that they've been unfairly attacked. But I mean, I'm in favor, and I vote is probably unconstitutional, but no problem with my suggestions. But I think there should be some kind of a truth in campaigning law or laws or whatever. I mean, I'll just give you a personal example, and I'm sure everybody in the room can on the chat on this forum can do the same thing. But my last election that I ran for and did win, but which is relevant because I got accused of accepting bribes from Northwest Airlines because I voted for the Northwest Airlines bailout, basically, and a big smear at the end of the campaign, like the last few days of the campaign. I was so ticked off. I went to the county attorneys in each county and filed a complaint that it was unfair campaign practice. And the short version is they had each one of them separately had their sheriffs investigated. They designated one of the county attorneys to talk to me with the results. And the results were, number one, we believe you're right. Number two, we believe that this is a clear violation of the law. And number three, we're willing to pursue it to court if you want to pursue it to court, but understand you're going to lose or we'll lose. And I said, why is that? And they said, because part of the standard that the courts will use is that it substantially affect the outcome of the election. And you won by, I don't remember what it was, 20% or something. They said, what are we going to argue? You would have got another 2% or 5% or whatever. And they said, we'll weigh heavily in terms of what you want to do because we think you're right and you've got a just cause. But after I thought about it, I said, well, I'll decline pursuing it. And the reason that I declined was it occurred to me that I could pursue it. The result would probably be a not guilty verdict, or not guilty, it's civil, more, I guess it was criminal, and that it would look like I was, that I was guilty. But there's something wrong with our elections, I'll tell you that. And I think this is the only reason I bring it up is I think artificial intelligence in terms of putting out false information that looks real, even in my own words, is going to be possible. I mean, that's the conundrum that I see coming up. And I don't think we're anywhere near prepared to deal with that world. I'm telling you, I don't think we're prepared to deal with the current world in terms of fairness in elections. But I think it gets exasperated with artificial intelligence.
Jeff, can I ask you a hopeful thing?
Yes, please.
I heard a podcast about the potential use of AI as a one-on-one tutor for kids in high school.
Absolutely.
And when you were talking about STEM and how Minnesota needs to get on top rather than the bottom, I wondered if you had a few thoughts about AI as a potential one-on-one tutor for high school students.
Oh, you're exactly right, for all students, and because it's deeply personal, it can be accessed as long as you have access to a high-speed connection in the internet. You don't have to be in the classroom asking the teacher. And it's very similar to what's going on in all business as well as the consumer industry, of the rise of smart bots. And that is, sometimes it's a little irritating when you can't get a hold of a person to answer your question for a service or whatever it might be. More and more companies are having you, first of all, go through that smart assistant, the virtual assistant. But those virtual assistants have gotten really, really smart. I have a home speaker system that is Sonos. It's a wireless system. And I had to do an upgrade that I couldn't get to work. And Sonos has their entire user manual now that is tied through artificial intelligence with that smart assistant. And it gave me exactly the information that I needed, where I didn't have to wait to talk to somebody. And then I could search deeper. Similarly, in public education, I think there's a wonderful opportunity to leverage artificial intelligence systems that have been appropriately trained in the right textbooks, so that they're not pulling up fake or false information elsewhere. But if a district had the ability to know that it's a trusted source of facts, the ability to learn and to get help and to get information at your fingertips is immense. However, what a lot of school districts are discovering is it's become a crutch for a lot of students in writing reports, much like I used it this morning to get information to share. And there is a lot of just copying and pasting of things that weren't their own thoughts and ideals. And that's going to be a real challenge, particularly in high school and college, with essays. What is your own thinking versus what you have just pulled off of a ChatGPT prompt? So again, lots of good that can work, but we also have to be wary of the unintended consequences. But I'm hopeful about AI. I think it's going to be a great tool. I don't believe it's going to be the big displacer of jobs that some might believe. I think there's always going to be the human element that's going to be necessary for making decisions. Can it make us all smarter and help us leverage outside resources much better? Absolutely. Will it impact some job categories? For sure. You're not going to need as many loan officers, for example, at a bank going through a credit analysis, because so much of this can be automated now, of getting the information from tax returns, doing credit scoring. So there's some jobs that definitely are at risk, but it gives us the opportunity to retrain and reskill into other more future forward jobs at the same time. But there will be some fits and starts as this continues to unfold. Bless you, Donna. And one of the things we're going to be looking at tomorrow at our Tech Talent Conference at Best Buy, we got about 250 people from business, government, education, in the nonprofit sector coming together in thinking about how do we equitably double the development of technology talent in our state over the course of the next 10 years. And it's going to take all of us working together and thinking about how do we have facilitated handoffs between nonprofits, whether it's in first grade, a student in Lego League that wants to get into a robotic program in middle school, going on to learn to code in some of these little coding academies. There's so many pillars of excellence in our community, but not a lot of facilitated handoffs where a parent, a teacher, a student can know what's the next step in my technology journey that I would like to pursue. And then we also are trying to remind business of the important role that they need to play, must play in our public education system. As the ultimate consumers of talent coming out of our schools, they should have more in the game, both in terms of investment and support, than they have in the past, because they've kind of pushed it over the Department of Education and said, that's your issue. We're doing our own thing. And that has to change. So yes, we need to expand the supply of talent in Minnesota, but we also have to modify the demand side of the equation in terms of hiring practices. Last year, 89% of IT jobs in Minnesota required a bachelor's degree. And it's not that that bachelor's degree or college education was even relevant to the competencies required for the job. It just made it easier for an HR department to kind of do an initial screen. We called that out at last year's Tech Talent Conference, and now we're happy to report that the data this year showed for those job postings, it's gone down to less than 70% from 89. And we hope that that will continue as we can impact hiring. The only way we're going to get the talent in the door at the companies we need is better embracing our communities of color, our immigrant populations. These are the populations growing in our metro area. And we have overlooked that untapped talent pool for far too long, and trying to be more intentional in terms of how we engage our BIPOC and immigrant communities in a more impactful way. I'll get off my soapbox here of things that we're trying to run through tomorrow, but I got off the AI track.
Well, what you're talking about is so huge. Way back when I served with Rick and others, I was the chair of the Economic Development Committee, and I thought that the single most important dollar we spent was for economic development was education. And I'm interested, Jeff, in your thoughts about how much the education community, either at the state level or at school district level, are in sync with what you're talking about. I
wish it was more, Todd. And first of all, thank you all that you've done previously to help elevate this. And I don't want to throw darts at our Department of Education, because they're doing, I believe, the best they can with the resources they have. They're asked to do a lot. And there were some unfunded mandates that they were stuck with around special education. Now there's other things that were mandated in the last session around the requirements of ethnic studies and other curriculum. And there's only so many hours in the day. So when we went to the legislature this past year with a bill called the Minnesota Computer Science Education Advancement Act, and there were essentially three asks. First, let's develop a statewide plan by which we can get ourselves out from last place. Last year, it was 21% of our schools. We're up to 28 this year, 28% in this year's study, but we're still behind Louisiana and Mississippi that are 49, 48. And so a statewide plan. So we were able to get legislation passed where there's now a task force that is studying the issue with the goal of within 5 years, all school districts in Minnesota will be offering, at least just offering, it's not a graduation requirement, but offering a computer science class. The other thing we were looking for was $2 million over the course of 2 years to fund teacher development. We can't ask school districts to offer a class if they don't have teachers prepared to teach. And sadly, that got pushed down to only $500,000. In a year where we had a surplus of $17 billion, we couldn't invest in teachers in these future forward technology careers to really start making a difference. I'll compare what we're kind of the slow approach we're taking in Minnesota to our neighbors to the west in North Dakota, last year, they not only required, computer science is a graduation requirement for all high school graduates starting next year, a requirement to graduate, also to take a cybersecurity class that is part of that. And they're wanting to make sure that, we safely are using the new technologies. So I look at states around us. I grew up in Iowa. Iowa will have more than 70% of its schools offering computer science next year, and they're on their way to 100%. They are really looking at themselves no longer as just an ag economy, but a technology economy. We at FEAR have been resting on our laurels in Minnesota for a long time, and we need to refocus some efforts. I'm happy to say that there are some large coalitions going on right now. You may have read in recent days that the Department of Commerce just named Minneapolis-St. Paul as a tech hub, one of 3 tech hubs across the country for our MnTech 3.0 coalition. That's around kind of the future of medical technology. And a lot of that's going to be driven by AI applications. The other thing is the CHIPS Act. So we're working to kind of build a semiconductor industry. In Bloomington, we have 3 big fabrication facilities with Polar Semiconductors, Skywater Technologies, and Seagate, and a lot of others that are in the semiconductor field. And we're a finalist for grant money there. Another one that is going on with Greater MSP in the University of Minnesota is called MBOLD. And this is around building a renewable and recyclable plastics industry, creation of new polymers that are more environmentally friendly, unlike some of the PFAS issues that we've had with 3M in wastewater. But also, how do we get organizations like Eureka Recycling and others to think differently about how we recycle and reuse plastics so they just don't end up in landfills? So I'm heartened by the number of community collaborations that are going on that are leveraging technology to impact our state, but we don't have the people to really drive this forward. That's my biggest concern for our next 10 years and 20 years. The Minnesota Business Partnership, along with a group called Lightcast, 2 weeks ago published a report worthy of reading called Minnesota's Vanishing Workforce. And the demographic drought that we face as baby boomers are retiring in large numbers, our labor force participation rates continue to go down. We're suffering net migration losses to warmer weather states. And our birth rate in Minnesota is much lower than a lot of other states. It's just a lot of things coming together, a perfect storm of negativity from a demographic standpoint. And it gets back to where will our talent come from? And it's going to need to come increasingly from greater Minnesota and from our communities of color and immigrant populations, areas that we've not done the best job, I feel, that we could as a state of developing them into future forward careers.
Jeff, I just want to comment on one thing related to that.
Yeah.
And I know it's not on the AI topic, but it amazes me. And I hear, the analysis that you're giving, and I think it's right, but I think there's a missing ingredient. And what the missing ingredient is from my standpoint in terms of workforce is, if I look at the data, it tells me that particularly young women specifically have not have not gone back into the workforce since the pandemic. And the main reason is childcare cost.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that we could kill, more than one bird with a stone by addressing that childcare issue. Now, I know that's way off topic here and stuff, but when I hear people talking about where we're going to fill in this workforce shortage that we clearly have in Minnesota, it seems to me that there'd be more attention being given to women that have not returned to the workforce from the pandemic.
No, Rick, you're exactly right. daycare has gotten exceedingly expensive, and it's become a barrier to employment for so many. The other thing that was enlightening to me on that report called "The Minnesota's Vanishing Workforce" is how many older white males left the workforce and didn't come back during the time of the pandemic. Early retirements, people just said, "Hey, I've had enough." And that's another strategy, is how do we re-engage those that might have stepped out prematurely, and maybe we welcome back with part-time remote work, whatever it might be, and leverage the collective intellectual power that exists not only on our screen right here that I'm seeing, but across our state. And that, I think, is another opportunity of how do we tap into those that have maybe shifted into a different form of work in their later years. Roz, I see your question in the chat about making sense to allow our students to use the best technology available instead of forcing them to do things the old way. Absolutely. Technology is a powerful enabler, and I don't know enough about what curriculum looks like now in our school systems in terms of how much technology is being used. I know there was a big push to get more tablets and iPads into the hands of even elementary school students, because there's so many great learning games available.
No, my point is like, if you can write a report using Chat GPT, why don't we just allow the students to use those technologies and understand that they can focus they can't learn everything all at once. So why not let them utilize the tools that are available? A lot of, remember, we wouldn't let our kids bring in their cell phones because God forbid they would go on them.
Yeah.
And, it's stuff like that where we have to start thinking differently on how we're going to educate our kids. And part of that, I agree with you, is educating them on how to be ethical in that process as well.
And I think the response from some educators would be, it's so much of school is learning how to learn, how to come up, you learn your critical thinking skills. It's why we don't always allow calculators to come up with a math problem, because that's easy to do, but it's the process of breaking down and doing deductive reasoning in mathematics is why a mathematics course is even taught versus just getting to an answer. And similarly, if you're doing a report on, the American Revolution, it's the insights that when students have to think to put something on paper as opposed to just regurgitating some facts. But I agree with you. There's a time and place for each, but tools are helpful.
Well, and they dropped computers in the middle of Africa, and the students actually figured out how to hack into the computer. And they had no instruction. So I don't know. People can learn one way or the other.
Yep.
And so I think, then you just make the assignments more challenging.
Yep.
What do you think of, it kind of related to the AI issue on the election fraud part of it? Seems to me that this issue of identification of who's voting is going to be resolved by your identification is going to be on you as a person. It's going to be your iris, or it's going to be your fingerprint, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think over time we're going to be utilizing that a lot more. Whether it's you're putting on your fingerprint or your whatever it might be, and maybe it's just simple as facial recognition. I'm surprised at how well it works on my iPhone for opening up apps. These things are going to continue to get better and better. So I think there's ways where voter identification can be easier than what we are currently seeing. But there's fraud in everything. So
it's like anytime you move information from one place to the next, it can be intercepted, whether it's, the Telegraph or Wells Fargo or whatever, driving stagecoaches or whatever. There's always that possibility for interception, and there's always people working to make that happen, and always people working to. It's a leapfrogging type of experience.
And I think the thing for me that has just been disheartening to see is the willingness of politicians in the heat of a battle to have at least their teams spread false information and false narratives. And I give credit to, for example, when the Republican National Party put out an ad soon after President Biden announced that he was running for re-election, it contained AI-generated images of kind of a dystopian view of our urban cities and crime, but it did say generated by AI. And so that it was called out as such, and that's what needs to happen. But some people may not look at that up in the upper corner and then think, oh, that really happened in a city, or an individual said that or was seen wearing this. That's where 2024 is going to be really, really interesting.
That's a really interesting idea. That sounds doable, Jeff.
Yeah, if you're footnoting, if you're using AI to generate an image, you should say that that's the case.
Yeah, and could there be legislation to that effect of requiring that disclosure?
Absolutely.
That's a really good idea.
It's already being done by, as I said, it was the Republican National Committee that put out the ad, and they footnoted that it was generated by AI, which was perfectly appropriate.
But I don't think that exonerates you from responsibility.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, it's, and as long as, in what they did with their, so yes, you're right. What I said was too far reaching. What they were showing is just cities in general. It wasn't showing President Biden leading a protest or breaking windows. That would go too far. But if it's just showing a view of a city that was more in general, and you said it was generative AI, and that's where that slippery slope comes of what's appropriate, what's not, what is bad intent, what's not.
I would ask the question, if you put that on there, how much of the public even has any clue what AI is?
Yeah.
Good
I mean,
point.
seriously.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
They may think that makes it right. Truthful.
Yep.
Well, there's already a lot of lies out there. I mean, prior to AI. And I mean, this is going to.
But you also run into a nasty situation where you have this huge headline, which often occurs, and then you have little tiny print showing that it's prompted or prepared by AI. So I mean, the message has already gotten across.
Yeah.
So I don't know how helpful that's going to be.
I don't either. So it's the use of AI in the election cycle is just fraught with risks and opportunities for bad actors with malintent to really impact people's thinking one way or another. And we already have seen that with what happened leading up to January 6th. It could be problematic. So I don't have any of the answers. I would say from our Minnesota Technology Association, as we're working with, going into this year's legislative session, we recognize the need for guardrails. We need accountability for those that use algorithms poorly. We're already beginning to see it on social media algorithms, going after a lot of the social media companies like Meta and others. But we have companies that are using algorithms, and we all do in our personal lives, in very productive and useful ways. And it's how do we balance regulating the bad applications with societal good. And that's going to be a tricky road to try to navigate.
Well, another thing is that when you think of the big data part, where you take massive amounts of data and start figuring it out on a personal basis of what's, how to profile a person, which is going on, and AI is part of that.
Yeah.
And you take a look at, frankly, the type of car you buy, where you shop, where you go to eat fast food. Give me a few of those factors and crunch it into a, artificial intelligence system, and they'll basically profile you. And they're doing it with more accuracy than they are with the, frankly, we're still using the campaigns they are still using, going door to door and surveying people and making calls and stuff like that. That's probably not as reliable anymore as what they're doing with big data and artificial intelligence analysis. I mean, we still do it because it's what we've been doing for the last 50 years or however long we've been doing it. But, I think we're finding that a lot of that data is that we're currently collecting at the door or on the phone or whatever. It's not all that reliable.
And that's part of the issue with a
people
lot of these AI learning models. It's, if you're using poor data you're going to make poor decisions.
It's the old
Right.
garbage in, garbage out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just as we hit the top of the hour, the last paragraph that my friend ChatGPT said about the use of AI in elections, it's important to note that while AI offers numerous advantages, it also presents challenges related to privacy, bias, and security. To fully harness the potential of AI in state elections, a careful balance must be struck between innovation and safeguarding the integrity and fairness of the electoral process. Easier said than done, but we know what we need to do. Now it's how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Ask ChatGPT.
I love it. Jeff, if you have an epiphany during this whole process, I hope you'll let Rick or somebody know, because it's really important.
It is. And if I do have any epiphanies, rest assured I will share. And we're learning all the time. I mean, for me, it's more of what our companies, how they're leveraging AI and machine learning. I learned of a new application just a couple of weeks ago at Cargill, where for the process of grain dryers drying soybeans, where they're using AI to optimize temperatures, speeds of the conveyor belt to get to the right level of moisture content. And then it's learning based on what market numbers are in terms of how dry to make it for storage. Fascinating applications and things as simple as a grain bin, running through a scanner. So there's a lot of great uses, and we're going to continue to learn. And to the extent our work can help inform our electoral process, rest assured, we'll share that information.
Awesome.
Rick, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, this was terrific. Thank you for your time, and thanks for everybody else who participated.
Apparently, we need to ask AI for more solutions to these.
Well, for those of you that haven't set up an account on ChatGPT, it's free and it's amazing. I asked it to write a limerick for a birthday party not long ago, and it was just amazing how creative it was. So, use it in your personal lives. It's pretty astounding what it will do.
I could have used it in 4th grade.
Yeah. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.